Okay, satellites. Remember, these are infectious pieces of nucleic acid, so they could be either DNA or RNA, and they require a helper virus. So an example of a satellite in humans is hepatitis D, as in dog. The hepatitis D satellite is pictured here in the middle, and it needs the help of hepatitis B virus because the hepatitis B virus will actually make the spike proteins for hepatitis D. So if hepatitis B as in boy is not present, then you won't be able to make more hepatitis D satellite virus, and that'll be the end of that infection. Both hepatitis B and D are transmitted the same way through bodily fluids, and if you have both at the same time, you get a much more severe infection of the liver. And so you can see this person over here with the jaundice or icterus where they've turned yellow. Viroids are an infectious piece of RNA. These are really strange. They only cause plant diseases that we know of so far. They don't cause any human diseases. So they're just an infectious piece of RNA that will come in to the plant cell. And for example, this is the potato spindle tuber viroid. And once it gets inside the cell, it will bind to the messenger RNA in the plant cell. And remember, when you have double-stranded RNA inside the cell does not like that. And so it will destroy that messenger RNA, and then those proteins don't get made. And so in potato plants, this causes the potatoes to be very small and spindly, and that causes a lot of disease. Prions are very strange. These stand for proteinaceous infectious particles. That's how they got their name, prion. So these are infectious proteins that infect the nervous system. So they will end up killing neurons in the brain, and you end up with lots of holes in your brain, and it kind of looks like Swiss cheese. So you get all these neurologic symptoms. There are a lot of different prion diseases. There's scrapie in sheep. That's the first prion disease that we discovered. They call it that because the sheep that are infected, they get very itchy and they will scrape and rub their skin against anything they can find, and they actually will rub their skin off. And then eventually they will die from that. We have mad cow disease in cows, and then we have Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So that one's just a bad luck. You have a mutation and get that. And then the variant CJD disease, that's the one you get from eating contaminated beef from a mad cow. Kuru is interesting. This was a prion disease they discovered in Papua New Guinea. And it was being transmitted because of the funeral rites. When a person died, the rest of the tribe would eat the person, and the women and children would get the less desirable parts like the brain, and that's where the prion proteins were, and so then that would infect those women and children that ate the infected brain. There's also fatal familial insomnia. That's a genetic disorder that causes a prion disease, and basically the people end up not being able to sleep anymore, and they die from a lack of sleep. And then closer to home, we do have chronic wasting disease in deer, elk, and moose. We do have that here in Utah. I do have a couple of websites, some links here at the bottom, that if you want to learn more about prion diseases, and then the one on the right, the bottom right, talks about the Kuru, which is really interesting. This is just what the prion diseases do in mad cow disease. So they end up killing off the neurons in the brain, and you get these holes in the brain, so you get all of these neurologic signs. The cattle have trouble walking. Sometimes they eventually will go down and not be able to get up. They just have some odd behaviors, like they might stand in a corner and not be able to figure out how to get out. They're really jumpy and nervous. They overreact to things. So, the cows were acting crazy, so they called it mad cow disease. Chronic wasting disease, which occurs in deer, elk, and moose populations. And you can see on this map that we do have chronic wasting disease in our deer, elk, and moose populations here in certain parts of Utah. And we do offer testing for chronic wasting disease for hunters to check their game that they've taken, which is a really good idea because we don't know if chronic wasting disease is transmissible to people, but they have shown that it has been transmissible to primates in the lab. So it probably would be a good idea to check your game that you've hunted before eating it, because if it does test positive, they don't recommend eating it. So there are two different types of prion proteins. So the prion protein with the C, C just stands for cellular, and there are normal cellular prion proteins that are in the neurons in the brain. We're not sure exactly what their jobs are, but they do seem to be involved in cell communication somehow. The prion protein, we're going to abbreviate that with an SC, just stands for scrapie, so that's the abnormal one. So if we take a look at a picture, you can see that the normal prion proteins in the neurons in the brain are here in green. But if the person or animal gets infected with one of these abnormal prion proteins in red, the abnormal prion proteins cause the normal prion proteins to misfold, and then they turn into an abnormal prion protein. And then these will build up and eventually kill the nerve cells that are in the brain and then cause neurologic disease.